The citadel of Velmorn had one road in, and on the night the garrison left it, I was the only man who stayed to walk it back up. They went down the mountain in the dark, torches bobbing like a line of fireflies, the castellan at their head shouting that there was no sense dying for a queen the histories had already buried. I watched them go from the gatehouse and felt no anger. Not really. I understood the arithmetic. The seal beneath the keep was failing. The hollow beast was stirring in the dark under the ice. And the bloodline sworn to hold the ward had been extinct for 200 years, or so everyone believed. A watch soldier with a service contract and a bad knee wasn't worth the wager of his own life. Neither, in the garrison's accounting, was she. Queen Alira had ruled Velmorn for 6 years, ever since the fever took her mother and the council decided a girl of 19 made a convenient figurehead for a holding nobody wanted in the first place. I'd watched her sign requisitions nobody read and preside over a court that had already, in its heart, written her epitaph. They were polite about it. They bowed at the right moments and used the right titles. But I'd stood at that gate long enough to learn the difference between a bow and a belief. And nobody in that hall had believed in her for years. When the deep cracks started singing up through the floor of the old chapel, that same court found reasons to be elsewhere. A sick aunt, a supply run, a sudden urgent letter from the lowlands. I'd watched them invent their excuses one by one, and said nothing, because saying something had never once changed how a noble's mind worked. I found her alone in the chapel that night, kneeling at the seal stone, with both palms flat against the cold granite, trying to hold a thing back with nothing but her own weight, and whatever was left of her nerve. "You should be on the road with the others, Captain," she said without turning. Her voice didn't shake. I respected that more than I can say. "I'm not a captain anymore. The captain left an hour ago." I set my lantern down on the stone beside her. Seemed like somebody ought to stay, who didn't have anywhere better to be. She turned to look at me then. I'd kept her gate for 4 years, and she'd never once needed to truly look at me. There'd been no reason to, in a court built on titles and not on faces. Her eyes were a deep amber, strange against the pale blue-gray of her skin, a single white streak running back through otherwise black hair like a crack in dark glass. She held my gaze the way a person holds eye contact when they've stopped expecting to be disappointed, and are bracing for it anyway, out of old habit more than hope. "It will take more than not having anywhere better to be," she said. "The ward needs warden blood to renew it. There is none left. There hasn't been in 2 centuries. The line died with the last of them, and good men have told me so my whole life as if it settled something." I only had the old iron ring my father left me, the one with a sigil I'd never been able to read, the one I'd worn on a cord under my shirt since the day they buried him. Because it had been his, and I had nothing else of him worth keeping. He'd never explained it. I'd never thought to ask why a watch soldier's father, a man who mended fences and split firewood for a living, carried a signet ring at all. Some questions only matter once it's too late to ask them. The first crack came through the chapel floor like a gunshot, and the lantern flame bent sideways, though there was no wind. Then the dark came up out of the stone. Not smoke, not shadow, but something that ate light the way water eats salt, folding the air around itself into a shape that was almost an animal and almost a wound. The hollow beast had been sealed 200 years for a reason. Up close, in the small cold space of that chapel, the reason was obvious in a way no history book had managed to make it. It struck once, low and fast, and the old iron ring against my chest answered, not with fire, not with light worth singing songs about, just a low, ordinary warmth. The warmth of something very old, recognizing something it had been waiting 200 years to recognize. The sigil I'd never been able to read burned itself into clear focus for 1/2 of 1 second. Long enough for the queen to see it over my shoulder, long enough for her to make a sound I had never once heard a queen make, something caught between a laugh and a sob. "That's a warden's mark," she said. "That's a warden's mark, you absolute fool. You've worn it your whole life and never once asked." There wasn't time to ask anything. I laid my hand flat on the seal stone beside hers, because that was what the ring seemed to want, because some part of an old promise older than either of us was finally remembering its own shape after 2 centuries of silence. The cold of the granite ran through my palm like a current through wet rope. The beast came at us again, and this time the stone answered it back, not with my strength, which was ordinary, weathered, a soldier's strength and nothing more, but with whatever debt 200 years of waiting had finally collected, and was now, all at once, calling due. Light didn't flood the chapel. It simply closed, the way a door closes at the end of a long night, the way a wound finally, after long enough, agrees to scar over instead of bleed. When the floor stopped singing, the dark had gone back down into whatever depth it had first crawled out of, and the queen was on her knees beside me. Not from the fight, she hadn't taken a single blow, but because her legs had simply stopped being willing to hold her up a moment longer. I caught her before she hit the stone. "I didn't ask you to stay," she said into my shoulder, and her voice had finally lost the composure she'd worn like armor since the moment I walked in. Somehow that undid me faster than the beast had. Everyone else had the sense to leave. You didn't even have a reason to. "I know," I said. "I won't leave you. I should have said that an hour ago, before any of this happened. I won't leave you, whether the ring meant anything or not. It was never about the ring." She didn't press her forehead to mine, the way I'd half expected, the way the old stories my mother used to tell by the fire always seemed to end. She did something smaller and truer. She took my scarred hand, the one still flat against the cooling seal stone, and laid it over the steady, unspectacular beat of her own heart, like she was asking it to learn a sound it might need to recognize again someday, long after I was gone. By the time the Castellan and the garrison straggled back up the mountain road at dawn, ashamed already, and arguing over who would explain themselves first, they found the chapel quiet, the crack in the floor sealed seamless, as if it had never opened at all, and their queen standing at the gate in last night's borrowed cloak, mine, with a watch soldier at her shoulder, wearing an iron ring out in the open for the first time in his life, instead of hidden under his collar. Nobody asked the Castellan to kneel. The queen didn't demand it. That was never her way, even now. He did it anyway, slow and unprompted, The way men do when they finally understood what they nearly let walk out of their lives unguarded, and what it cost them to almost lose it twice in one night, once to the dark, and once to their own poor arithmetic. I stayed on at Velmorn after that. Not as a captain, I never wanted the title back, and she never offered it the way the old ledgers expect such things to be offered. Just as the man who hadn't left when leaving would have cost him nothing, the court found new words for what that meant. Eventually, the way courts always do, once the danger has passed, and they need a tidy name for what shamed them, I never needed the words. I'd already said the only sentence that mattered, on a night when nobody else was listening to hear it, and I have meant every word of it every day since. Even now, years later, telling it to you by this same fire, in this same chapel, with her asleep upstairs, and the seal stone quiet under both our feet. I won't leave you. Some promises are worth keeping long after the thing you swore to protect no longer needs protecting from anything, especially then, when there's no danger left to make the staying look brave. That's the part nobody ever tells you about Warden's blood, or any other kind worth having. It was never really about the ring. It never is.